Yo, this is Gyromancer here, and welcome back to our First Impression series. Today's game is Supernova, a MOBA developed by Bandai Namco and Primal Game Studio. With all the MOBAs out there these days, it's hard to stand out in the MOBA genre, but Supernova manages to feature some interesting traits that make it stand out. Unlike basically all popular MOBAs, Supernova isn't based on an RPG fantasy magic theme. It actually has a well-done sci-fi theme, yet the biggest outlier trait is the RTS element of Supernova. Yeah, that's right, RTS, real-time strategy. These two elements combine to create something best described as Supreme Commander 2 MOBA. We'll get into RTS elements in a moment, but first, let's break down MOBAs for those who aren't familiar with standard MOBA mechanics. MOBAs are a team-oriented game that features two teams trying to take down the other team's base. The center of the team's base has some kind of core that must be destroyed in order to win the game. Each map features what are called lanes, which are paths that automated minions travel down to reach the core. Each team is in charge of escorting groups of these minions down the lanes and toward the enemy base. Each lane has a few towers along the way, which are smaller objectives that must be taken out in order to reach the enemy core. Once the enemy towers are destroyed, the players can finally take down the enemy's core in order to win the match. There are also other features of MOBAs such as jungling, but this video isn't a full explanation of MOBAs. So I mentioned RTS, but how does one fit RTS elements into a MOBA? Well, this is where it gets interesting. So the automated minions that head down the lanes are usually automatically dispensed. But in Supernova, the players are directly involved in managing the minions rather than just escorting them. When the game begins, you'll have resource points, which you can use to create various factories that can build different kinds of troops. Once these factories are built, you can use resource points gained during the match to build and deploy units, as well as research a technology tree that upgrades your troops. There is a battle analysis tab that shows you how the battle is going and suggests what units to deploy in order to combat the strengths and weaknesses of your enemy's troops. So rather than just pushing forward toward the core, you are also fighting a strategic battle against the opponents in your lane. For players like myself who get bored of MOBAs very quickly and can't seem to enjoy them, the RTS element is a great addition for those who like strategy games. I found that the RTS element kept me engaged in the game and I would keep playing. Even if you enjoy standard MOBAs, the RTS aspect of Supernova adds a whole new level of complication to the game that can make it all the more enjoyable. The downside of this added layer of complication is that it makes the learning curve much higher. Players new to MOBAs might be turned away due to the large amount of information to process and skills to learn. The only reason I was personally able to hang on despite before-mentioned lack of MOBA experience was my understanding and love for RTS games. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have been completely lost. Thankfully, the tutorial is quite forgiving and doesn't start you off with an impossible challenge like some other MOBAs I played. As I mentioned in my look at Orcs Must Die Unchained, the humans vs. AI game seemed incredibly hard as the AIs were aggressive and hard to deal with for someone who isn't used to MOBAs or the game itself. Fortunately, Supernova's humans vs. AI games are just as forgiving as the tutorial and actually lean in a bit toward the players winning. One of the primary ways of retaining new players is to give them some early wins so they'll feel like they are accomplishing something, so they'll stick with it until they get over the learning curve. Thankfully, Supernova does a good job of this. The new player experience actually ties into another point about the RTS elements that is worth mentioning. Early on when playing, the RTS elements are sort of lacking as they are trying not to bombard new players with too much to manage. So if you join Supernova looking for the RTS elements and are disappointed, I suggest you stick with it for a bit longer, as you'll start to unlock new factories, troops, and technology that add on to the RTS element. Which brings me to the troops themselves. There are currently two factions in the game, Human and Cyborg. The factions are tied to what kind of troops you'll be deploying in the battle, not what character you'll be playing as. So if you're playing with human troops, you'll deploy some Space Marine looking units, and if you have Cyborg troops, you'll have your own personal army of Apple devices that shoot green lasers. As you continue playing, you'll unlock new factories, troop types, and technology. You can also buy upgrades for these troops in the store with in-game credits. Some of these upgrades, as well as character cosmetics, can be bought with real money, but I like to stress that the actual units themselves are unlocked through play. So, over time, you'll collect a bunch of army components that you can put together to build your own personal playstyle. I like to analyze the in-game store a bit more, but unfortunately, due to a grammatical misunderstanding, I thought the alpha was going to last a day longer than it did, so I don't have any footage of the store. So I've talked an awful lot about the RTS elements, but what about those of you who just want a good MOBA? Well, the devs didn't forget about you guys either. They are spending plenty of time on making basic MOBA elements interesting as well. In fact, you can turn on automatic troop deployment, which automatically deploys troops based on your battle report. So if you want to ignore the RTS elements of the game, you actually can. In fact, there are quite a few people who turn on automatic troop deployment and then just roam the map, sneaking up and taking down commanders in completely different lanes other than their troops. The game also includes a wide selection of characters who each have different personalities, which are expressed by their voice lines as well as having very different playstyles. Some characters are based on standard energy systems for their special abilities, but a few of the characters have completely different special ability systems such as stamina or a rage bar. Some of the characters even have special abilities that, when activated, give their other special abilities completely different powers. Character balance is pretty well done so far, though being a MOBA, some characters can be helpless in certain situations unless you're communicating with your teammates. Communication is also important when building your team before the match begins. There's support, defense, and offense-oriented characters, so having a good combination of the different types of commanders can be key. Well, I don't want to give everything away before you get to check out the game for yourself, and I don't want to bore you to death, so let's wrap things up. I was able to play in the Supernova Alpha, which is over, so things are liable to change between this video and the final release. Closed beta is launching on July 23rd, so if you sign up now you might be able to get in, as betas generally have more players than alphas. Supernova is planned to be a free-to-play game, just like many other MOBAs. So if you're looking for a new MOBA, or you can't seem to get into MOBAs but you like RTS, then I suggest you give it a look. If you enjoyed this video, then subscribe for more gaming content, and check out last First Impressions video in which he took a look at Orcs Must Die Unchained. Also, share in the comment section below whether you prefer MOBAs or RTSs, and we'll see what the results are in the next First Impressions video. Thanks all for watching. Later.